Welcome to One Step Past, and this is Action Heroes of History, Clyde Beatty. In his day, Clyde Beatty was a megastar. If you didn't know anything else about him, you at least knew his name and that he was a lion and tiger trainer. Clyde Beatty was an animal guy of the highest order. When you saw Clyde live, you would see him do amazing things. Clyde actively furthered his own legacy by appearing as himself in movies, comic books, radio, and television. These stories were fictitious exploits, but they made him larger than life. Kids, of course, thought Clyde Beatty was cool, and so did adults. There was no denying that Beatty knew his business when it came to handling animals. Clyde's beginnings. Clyde Raymond Beatty was born in Ohio in 1903. This is a rather ordinary start for someone who became such a legend in his own time. Clyde went to high school, but he knew what he wanted to do with his life long before he graduated. It wasn't long after, in the fall of 1921, when he and a friend hopped a boxcar and went to Washington Courthouse in Ohio. That's actually the name of the town. It was in Washington Courthouse where young Clyde Beatty joined Howe's Great London Circus. This would be the first of many circuses he worked with. Clyde started out as a cage boy doing grunt work, but by 1923 he was already working small, mixed groups of big cats in the steel arena. Although Clyde Beatty seemed to have a natural ability of training animals, he did have his mentors. His first boss was the legendary wild animal trainer Lewis Roth. His next teacher was the trainer John Chubby Guilfoyle. Those two men were accomplished in their field, but I don't think anyone, even Clyde Beatty himself, expected he would become so universally well known. Clyde Beatty established. In less than a decade, young Clyde Beatty's name became synonymous with circus animal training. His name was referenced all over in the media. If you never saw him in person or anywhere else, you still knew the name. That's the power of true stardom. Clyde had a self-confidence, the right swagger, and certainly the theatrics to rocket him to circus fame. The circus life is best suited for those who love the spotlight, and Clyde Beatty, for sure, took full advantage of it. That is not to say that he was completely full of himself. Not at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of people credited Clyde Beatty with being the first animal trainer to use a chair in his act. Clyde himself disclaimed credit for this in his autobiography, saying, "It was in use when I was a cage boy and had been used long before." Quite simply, he didn't have to claim false credit. What he could actually do was impressive enough without having to lie about it. Clyde Beatty is best known for training lions and tigers together in the same steel-barred cage. What a lot of people may not realize is that Clyde trained all kinds of animals, including bears, cougars, hippos, hyenas, and polar bears. Sometimes he brought these different kinds of animals together in the same cage in what could have been extremely deadly feats of daring. At his peak, Clyde Beatty had 43 lions and tigers, male and female, in the same act and established a world record. Clyde's animal act was so elaborate that he had his own rail car in the circus train. The routine for which Clyde Beatty was best known was his fighting act. He would enter the cage with his whip and a pistol strapped to his side. These weren't just props, but they were meant to emphasize his mastery of the beasts. Clyde did have one major mishap, however, that could have ended him. In early 1932, a lion named Nero, one of Clyde's favorites, attacked his master and tore up his leg. Fortunately, Clyde was rescued and taken to the hospital. Nero was easily put away into his cage and no harm came to him. It took Clyde months to recover, but it did not deter him from animal training. As a matter of fact, Clyde would have a rematch with Nero a year later in his first movie. Clyde Beatty, superstar. Anyone this famous was not going to escape the attention of the entertainment industry for long. Although he was not an actor, he was an entertainer and suitable for action movies. Clyde played himself in fictitious stories with very real animal acts. His first movie was The Big Cage in 1933. He continued to make movies until 1954, either as the star or in a cameo. He had his own comic book adventures. In 1938, Clyde Beatty was given his very own feature in the anthology comic Crackajack Funnies #1, published by Whitman and Dell. This would continue until number 43, the final issue, in 1942. Also of note are one-shot comic books Clyde Beatty had of his very own in 1953 and 1956. Clyde was also very marketable in children's books. Radio was the next big frontier for Clyde Beatty. He was the star of his own scripted weekly radio series, The Clyde Beatty Show, from 1950 to 52. This is pretty good considering the fact he wasn't even on it. His voice was supplied by character actor Vic Perrin, a very good actor by the way, who went uncredited. Clyde Beatty himself was simply too busy with his animals to do the show. At this point, it was clear that Clyde Beatty's name and image already had a life of its own outside of the real man. TV was the final frontier for Clyde Beatty in media. From the 1950s into the 1960s, Beatty made a number of appearances on variety shows performing his long-storied animal acts. One such performance was in 1957 on The Ed Sullivan Show, when something went wrong. Although perfectly willing to perform on the incredibly famous TV show at first, it was during rehearsal that Clyde discovered the stage to be too small. Clyde told Ed Sullivan that the stage was too small and unsafe for his act, but Sullivan convinced him to perform anyway. Clyde went ahead with the act, Ever the Showman, but lost control of the lions. Sullivan did a slick bit of last-minute thinking to cover for this mishap. The live audience could plainly see something was wrong. The home audience wouldn't have to. While Clyde was trying to get things under control, Sullivan had the camera follow him into the audience where he would introduce some of the celebrities who just happened to be in the crowd. Once Clyde had everything back under control, he finished the act. I bet he thanked God for his pistol and the blank cartridges he fired to settle things down. Clyde the Family Man. There is so much known about Clyde Beatty's professional life, but what about his personal life? He was the eldest of 9 children, so he had a lot of relations. He was married 3 times, but only his first marriage ended in divorce. Wife number 1 was Beatrice Ernestine Pegg from 1926 to 32. They did have one child, a daughter named Joyce Betty Ferguson. Why did they divorce? I don't know if anyone besides Clyde and Beatrice knew the reasons why. I do believe, however, that Clyde's career may have played a part in it. He was still pretty new in his line of work and becoming established. In any case, it was unfortunate. Wife number 2 was really the love of Clyde's life. He married Harriet Evans in 1933. She was an aerialist in the circus. Clyde and Harriet really worked as a team. A year after they were married, Harriet insisted on being trained as an animal trainer herself. This was a highly unusual occupation for a woman at that time. By 1935, however, Clyde let Harriet have her own act, and she did very well. The public and the press really loved her. Harriet had a daughter named Albina, born in 1931. Albina learned animal training from her stepfather and mother and became a lion trainer herself. Albina always gave her stepfather a lot of credit for her success. Sadly, Harriet died in 1950 of a heart ailment. It wasn't long before Clyde remarried. Wife number 3 was Jane Lorraine Abel. He was married to Jane from 1951 until his death in 1965. Together they had a son, Clyde Beatty Jr. The legacy of Clyde Beatty. Clyde Beatty worked in circuses from 1921 until shortly before his death in 1965. From 1945 to 1956, he even had his own Clyde Beatty Circus. However, his name would appear as part of the circus name as early as the late 1930s and by 1938 for sure. This included Cole Brothers Clyde Beatty Circus, Robbins Brothers Beatty, Hammond Borden Clyde Beatty, Clyde Beatty Wallace Brothers, and Clyde Beatty Russell Brothers. After Clyde Beatty gave up ownership of his own circus, new owners continued to call it Clyde Beatty Circus until 1958, and then Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus for the rest of his lifetime. A Clyde Beatty Museum was started in his hometown of Bainbridge, Ohio. This is the ultimate resource of all things Clyde and certainly worth visiting. Clyde Beatty died on July 19, 1965, from esophageal cancer. He was 62. It had to take something like that to bring down this guy, because he was about as tough and fearless as they come. A true action hero of history. Thank you for watching. Keep watching this channel for more videos about incredible true life action heroes.